tables. Of course, the children didn't see all this at first. In fact, the first thing they noticed about the old gentleman was his hand. It was one morning, as they sat on the fence, waiting for the green dragon, which was 3¼ minutes late by Peter's Waterbury watch that he had given him on his last birthday. The green dragon's going where father is, said Phyllis. If it were really a dragon, we could stop it and ask it to take our love to father. Dragons don't carry people's love, said Peter. They'd be above it. Yes, they do, if you tame them thoroughly first. They fetch and carry like pet spaniels, said Phyllis, and feed out of your hand. I wonder why father never writes to us. Mother says he's been too busy, said Bobby. But he'll write soon, she says. I say, Phyllis suggests, let's all wave to the green dragon as it goes by. If it's a magic dragon, it'll understand and take our loves to father. And if it isn't, 3 waves aren't much. We shall never miss them. So, when the green dragon tore shrieking out of the mouth of its dark lair, which was the tunnel, all 3 children stood on the railing and waved their pocket handkerchiefs without stopping to think whether they were clean handkerchiefs or the reverse. They were, as a matter of fact, very much the reverse. And out of a first-class carriage, a hand waved back. A quite clean hand. It held a newspaper. It was the old gentleman's hand. After this, it became the custom for waves to be exchanged between the children and the 9:15. And the children, especially the girls, liked to think that perhaps the old gentleman knew father and would meet him in business, wherever that shady retreat might be, and tell him how his 3 children stood on the rail far away in the green country and waved their love to him every morning, wet or fine. For they were now able to go out in all sorts of weather, such as they would never have been allowed to go out in when they lived in their villa house. This was Aunt Emma's doing, and the children felt more and more that they had not been quite fair to this unattractive aunt, when they found how useful were the long gaiters and waterproof coats that they had laughed at her for buying for them. Mother, at this time, was very busy with her writing. She used to send off a good many long blue envelopes with stories in them, and large envelopes of different sizes and colours used to come to her. Sometimes she would sigh when she opened them and say, "Another story come home to roost. Oh dear, oh dear." And then the children would be very sorry. But sometimes she would wave the envelope in the air and say, "Hooray, hooray, here's a sensible editor. He's taken my story, and this is the proof of it." At first, the children thought the proof meant the letter the sensible editor had written, but they presently got to know that the proof was long slips of paper with the story printed on them. Whenever an editor was sensible, there were buns for tea. One day, Peter was going down to the village to get the buns to celebrate the sensibleness of the editor of the Children's Globe, when he met the station master. Peter felt very uncomfortable, for he had now had time to think over the affair of the coal mine. station master might not care to speak to a person who had stolen coals. Stolen is a nasty word, but Peter felt it was the right one. So he looked down and said nothing. It was the station master who said good morning as he passed by, and Peter answered good morning. Then he thought, perhaps he doesn't know who I am by daylight, or he wouldn't be so polite. And he did not like the feeling which thinking this gave him. And then, before he knew what he was going to do, he ran after the station master, who stopped when he heard Peter's hasty boots crunching the road and coming up with him, very breathless, and with his ears now quite magenta-coloured. He said, I don't want you to be polite to me if you don't know me when you see me. Eh, said the station master. I thought perhaps you didn't know it was me that took the coals, Peter went on, when you said good morning. But it was, and I'm sorry. There. Why, said the station master, I wasn't thinking anything at all about the precious coals. Let bygones be bygones. And where were you off to in such a hurry? I'm going to buy buns for tea, said Peter. I thought you were all so poor, said the station master. So we are, said Peter confidently, but we always have 3 pennyworth of halfpennies for tea whenever Mother sells a story or a poem or anything. Oh, said the station master, so your mother writes stories, does she? The beautifulest you ever read, said Peter. You ought to be very proud to have such a clever mother. Yes, said Peter, but she used to play with us more before she had to be so clever. Well, said the station master, I must be getting along. You give us a look in at the station whenever you feel so inclined. And as to coals, it's a word that, well, oh no, we never mention it, eh? Thank you, said Peter. I'm very glad it's all straightened out between us. And he went on across the canal bridge to the village to get the buns, feeling more comfortable in his mind than he had felt since the hand of the station master had fastened on his collar that night among the coals. Next day, when they had sent the threefold wave of greeting to father by the green dragon, and the old gentleman had waved back as usual, Peter proudly led the way to the station. But ought we, said Bobby. After the coals, she means, Phyllis explained. I met the station master yesterday, said Peter, in an offhand way, and he pretended not to hear what Phyllis had said. He expressly invited us to go down any time we liked. After the coals, repeated Phyllis. Stop a minute. My bootlace is undone again. It always is undone again, said Peter, and the station master was more of a gentleman than you'll ever be, Phil, throwing coal at a chap's head like that. Phyllis did up her bootlace and went on in silence, but her shoulders shook, and presently a fat tear fell off her nose and splashed on the metal of the railway line. Bobby saw it. Why, what's the matter, darling? She said, stopping short and putting her arm around the heaving shoulders. He called me ungentlemanly, sobbed Phyllis. I didn't never call him or two before. Well, you began, you know, said Bobby honestly, about coals and all that. Don't you think you'd better both unsay everything since the wave and let Honour be satisfied? I will, if Peter will, said Phyllis, snivelling. All right, said Peter. Honour is satisfied. Here, use my hanky, Phil, for goodness sake, if you've lost yours as usual. I wonder what you do with them. You had my last one, said Phyllis, indignantly, to tie up the rabbit hutch door with. But you're very ungrateful. It's quite right what it says in the poetry book about sharper than a serpent it is to have a toothless child. But it means ungrateful when it says toothless. Miss Lowe told me so. All right, said Peter impatiently. I'm sorry. There. Now will you come on? They reached the station and spent a joyous 2 hours with the porter. He was a worthy man and seemed never tired of answering the questions that began with why, which many people in higher ranks of life often seem weary of. He told them many things that they had not known before, as, for instance, that the things that hook carriages together are called couplings, and that the pipes, like great serpents that hang over the couplings, are meant to stop the train with. If you could get a hold of one of them when the train is going and pull them apart, said he, she'd stop dead off with a jerk. Who's she? Said Phyllis. The train, of course, said the porter. After that, the train was never again it to the children. And, you know, the thing in the carriages where it says on it, £5 fine for improper use. If you was to improperly use that, the train would stop. And if you used it properly, said Roberta, it'd stop just the same, I suppose, said he. But it isn't proper use unless you're being murdered. There was an old lady once. Someone kidded her on it was a refreshment room bell, and she used it improper, not being in danger of her life, though hungry. And when the train stopped and the guard came along, expecting to find someone weltering in their last moments, she says, "Oh, please, mister, I'll take a glass of stout and a bath bun," she says, and the train was 7 minutes behind her time as it was. What did the guard say to the old lady? I dunno, replied the porter, but I lay she didn't forget it in a hurry, whatever it was. In such delightful conversation, the time went by all too quickly. The station master came out once or twice from the sacred inner temple behind the place where the hole is that they sell you tickets through, and was most jolly with them all. Just as if coal had never been discovered, Phyllis whispered to her sister. He gave them each an orange and promised to take them up into the signal box one of these days when he wasn't so busy. Several trains went through the station, and Peter noticed for the first time that engines have numbers on said, "Mother, didn't you ever walk on the railway lines when you were little?" Mother was an honest and honourable mother, so she had to say yes. "Well then," said Phyllis. "But, darlings, you don't know how fond I am of you. What should I do if you got hurt?" "Are you fonder of us than Granny was of you when you were little?" Phyllis asked. Bobby made signs to her to stop, but Phyllis never did see signs, no matter how plain they might be. Mother did not answer for a minute. She got up to put more water in the teapot. "No one," she said at last, "ever loved anyone more than my mother loved me." Then she was quiet again, and Bobby kicked Phyllis hard under the table, because Bobby understood a little bit the thoughts that were making Mother so quiet. The thoughts of the time when Mother was a little girl and was all the world to her mother. It seems so easy and natural to run to Mother when one is in trouble. Bobby understood a little how people do not leave off running to their mothers when they are in trouble, even when they are grown up, and she thought she knew a little what it must be to be sad and have no mother to run to any more. So she kicked Phyllis, who said, "What are you kicking me like that for, Bob?" And then Mother laughed a little and sighed and said, "Very well then, only let me be sure you do know which way the trains come, and don't walk on the line near the tunnel or near corners. Trains keep to the left like carriages," said Peter. "So if we keep to the right, we're bound to see them coming." "Very well," said Mother, "and I dare say you think that she ought not to have said it. But she remembered about when she was a little girl herself, and she did say it, and neither her own children, nor you, nor any other children in the world could ever understand exactly what it cost her to do it. Only some few of you, like Bobby, may understand a very little bit." It was the very next day that Mother had to stay in bed because her head ached so. Her hands were burning hot, and she would not eat anything, and her throat was very sore. "If I was you, Mum," said Mrs. Vinny, "I should take and send for the doctor. There's a lot of catchy complaints a-going about just now. My sister's eldest, she took a chill, and it went to her inside 2 years ago come Christmas, and she's never been the same gal since. Mother wouldn't at first, but in the evening she felt so much worse that Peter was sent to the house in the village that had 3 laburnum trees by the gate, and on the gate a brass plate with W. Forest M.D. on it. W. Forest M.D. came at once. He talked to Peter on the way back. He seemed a most charming and sensible man, interested in railways and rabbits and really important things. When he had seen Mother, he said it was influenza. "Now, Lady Grave airs," he said in the hall to Bobby. "I suppose you'll want to be head nurse." "Of course," said she. "Well then, I'll send down some medicine. Keep up a good fire. Have some strong beef tea made ready to give her as soon She told them what the doctor had said and what Mother had said. And now, said she, when she had told all, there's no one but us to do anything, and we've got to do it. I've got the shilling for the mutton. We can do without the beastly mutton, said Peter. Bread and butter will support life. People have lived on less on desert islands many a time. Of course, said his sister, and Mrs. Finney was sent to the village to get as much brandy and soda water and beef tea as she could buy for a shilling. But even if we never have anything to eat at all, said Phyllis, you can't get all those other things with our dinner money. No, said Bobby, frowning. We must find out some other way. Now, think, everybody, just as hard as ever you can. They did think, and presently they talked, and later, when Bobby had gone up to sit with Mother, in case she wanted anything, the other two were very busy with scissors and a white sheet and a paintbrush and the pot of Brunswick black that Mrs. Finney used for grates and fenders. They did not manage to do what they wished exactly with the first sheet, so they took another out of the linen cupboard. It did not occur to them that they were spoiling good sheets, which cost good money. They only knew that they were making a good, but what they were making comes later. Bobby's bed had been moved into Mother's room, and several times in the night she got up to mend the fire and to give her mother milk and soda water. Mother talked to herself a good deal, but it did not seem to mean anything. And once she woke up suddenly and called out, Mama, Mama, and Bobby knew she was calling for Granny, and that she had forgotten that it was no use calling, because Granny was dead. In the early morning, Bobby heard her name and jumped out of bed and ran to Mother's bedside. Oh, yes, I think I was asleep, said Mother. My poor little duck, how tired you'll be. I do hate to give you all this trouble. Trouble, said Bobby. Don't cry, sweet, Mother said. I shall be all right in a day or two. And Bobby said, yes, and tried to smile. When you're used to 10 hours of solid sleep, to get up 3 or 4 times in your sleep time makes you feel as though you had been up all night. Bobby felt quite stupid, and her eyes all sore and stiff. But she tidied the room and arranged everything neatly before the doctor came. This was at 8:30. Everything going on all right, little nurse, he said at the front door. Did you get the brandy? I've got the brandy, said Bobby, in a little flat bottle. I didn't see the grapes or the beef tea, though, said he. No, said Bobby firmly, but you will tomorrow, and there's some beef stewing in the oven for beef tea. Who told you to do that? He asked. I noticed what Mother did when Phil had mumps. Right, said the doctor. Now you get your old woman to sit with your mother, and then you eat a good breakfast and go straight to bed and sleep till dinner time. We can't afford to have the head nurse ill. He was really quite a nice doctor. When the 9:15 came out of the tunnel that morning, the old gentleman in the first class put down his newspaper, and got ready to wave his hand to the 3 children on the fence. But this morning there were not 3. There was only 1, and that was Peter. Peter was not on the railings either, as usual. He was standing in front of them, in an attitude like that of a showman showing off the animals in a menagerie, or of the kind clergyman when he points with a wand at the scenes from Palestine, when there is a magic lantern and he is explaining it. Peter was pointing too, and what he was pointing at was a large white sheet nailed against the fence. On the sheet there were thick black letters, more than a foot long. Some of them had run a little because of Phyllis having put the Brunswick black on too eagerly, but the words were quite easy to read. This was what the old gentleman and several other people in the train read in the large black letters on the white sheet. Look out at the station. A good many people did look out at the station and were disappointed, for they saw nothing unusual. The old gentleman looked out too, and at first he too saw nothing more unusual than the gravelled platform and the sunshine and the wallflowers and forget-me-nots in the station borders. It was only just as the train was beginning to puff and pull itself together to start again that he saw Phyllis. She was quite out of breath with running. "Oh," she said, "I thought I'd missed you. My bootlaces would keep coming down, and I fell over them twice. Here, take it." She threw a warm, dampish letter into his hand as the train moved. He leaned back in his corner and opened the letter. This is what he read. "Dear Mister, we do not know your name. Mother is ill, and the doctor says to give her the things at the end of the letter. But she says she can't afford it, and to get mutton for us, and she will have the broth. We do not know anybody here but you, because Father is away, and we do not know the address. Father will pay you, or if he has lost all his money or anything, Peter will pay you when he is a man. We promise it on our honor. I owe you for all the things Mother wants. Signed, Peter. Will you give the parcel to the station master because of us not knowing what train you come down by? Say it is for Peter that was sorry about the coals, and he will know all right. Roberta, Phyllis, Peter." Then came the list of things the doctor had ordered. The old gentleman read it through once, and his eyebrows went up. He read it twice and smiled a little. When he had read it twice, he put it in his pocket and went on reading the Times. At about 6 that evening, there was a knock at the back door. The 3 children rushed to open it, and there stood the friendly porter who had told them so many interesting things about railways. He dumped down a big hamper on the kitchen flags. "Old gent," he said, "he asked me to fetch it up straight away." "Thank you very much," said Peter, and then, as the porter lingered, he added, "I'm most awfully sorry I haven't got 2 pence to give you like Father does, but—" "You drop it if you please," said the porter indignantly. "I wasn't thinking about no 2pences. I only wanted to say I was sorry your mamma was wasn't so well, and to ask how she finds herself this evening. And I fetched her along a bit of sweet briar, very sweet in smell it is. 2 pence. 2 pence indeed, said he, and produced a bunch of sweet briar from his hat. Just like a conjurer, as Phyllis remarked afterwards. Thank you very much, said Peter, and I beg your pardon about the 2 pence. No offence, said the porter, untruly but politely, and went. Then the children undid the hamper. First there was straw, and then there were fine shavings, and then came all the things they had asked for, and plenty of them, and then a good many things they had not asked for, among others peaches and port wine, and 2 chickens, a cardboard box of big red roses with long stalks, and a tall, thin, green bottle of lavender water, and 3 smaller, fatter bottles of eau de cologne. There was a letter too. Dear Roberta and Phyllis and Peter, it said, here are the things you want. Your mother will want to know where they came from. Tell her they were sent by a friend who heard she was ill. When she is well again, you must tell her all about it, of course. And if she says you ought not to have asked for the things, tell her that I say you are quite right, and that I hope she will forgive me for taking the liberty of allowing myself a great pleasure. The letter was signed G.P., something that the children couldn't read. I think we were right, said Phyllis. Right? Of course we were right, said Bobby. All the same, said Peter, with his hands in his pockets. I don't exactly look forward to telling Mother the whole truth about it. We're not to do it till she's well, said Bobby, and when she's well, we shall be so happy she shan't mind a little fuss like that. Oh, just look at the roses. I must take them up to her. And the sweet briar, said Phyllis, sniffing it loudly. Don't forget the sweet briar. As if I should, said Roberta. Mother told me the other day there was a thick hedge of it at her mother's house when she was a little girl. Chapter 4. The Engine Burglar. What was left of the second sheet and the Brunswick black came in very nicely to make a banner bearing the legend, She is nearly well, thank you. And this was displayed to the Green Dragon about a fortnight after the arrival of the wonderful hamper. The old gentleman saw it and waved a cheerful response from the train, and when this had been done, the children saw that now was the time when they must tell Mother what they had done when she was ill, and it did not seem nearly so easy as they had thought it would be. But it had to be done, and it was done. Mother was extremely angry. She was seldom angry, and now she was angrier than they had ever known her. This was horrible, but it was much worse when she suddenly began to cry. Crying is catching, I believe, like measles and whooping cough. At any rate, everyone at once found itself taking part in a crying party. Mother stopped first. She dried her eyes, and then she said, "I'm sorry I was so angry, darlings, because I know you didn't understand. We didn't mean to be naughty, Mammy," sobbed Bobby, and Peter and Phyllis sniffed. Now, listen, said Mother. It's quite true that we're poor, but we have enough to live on. You mustn't go telling everyone about our affairs. It's not right, and you must never, never, never ask strangers to give you things. Now, always remember that, won't you? They all hugged her and rubbed their damp cheeks against hers and promised that they would. And I'll write a letter to your old gentleman, and I shall tell him that I didn't approve. Oh, of course, I shall thank him too for his kindness. It's you I don't approve of, my darlings, not the old gentleman. He was as kind as ever he could be. And you can give the letter to the station master to give him, and we won't say any more about it. Afterwards, when the children were alone, Bobby said, Isn't Mother splendid? You catch any other grown-up saying they were sorry they had been angry. Yes, said Peter, she is splendid, but it's rather awful when she's angry. She's like avenging and bright in the song, said Phyllis. I should like to look at her if it wasn't so awful. She looks so beautiful when she's really downright furious. They took the letter to the station master. I thought you said you hadn't got any friends except in London, said he. We've made him since, said Peter. But he doesn't live hereabouts. No, we just know him on the railway. Then the station master retired to that sacred inner temple behind the little window where the tickets are sold, and the children went down to the porter's room and talked to the porter. They learned several interesting things from him. Among others, that his name was Perks, that he was married and had 3 children, that the lamps in front of engines are called headlights, and the ones at the back tail lights. And that just shows, whispered Phyllis, that trains really are dragons in disguise, with proper heads and tails. It was on this day that the children first noticed that all engines are not alike. Alike, said the porter, whose name was Perks. Lord, love you, no, miss, no more alike, nor what you and me are. That little one, without a tender, as went by just now, all on her own, that was a tank. That was, she's off to do some shunting to other side, oh, Maidbridge. That's as it might be you, miss. Then there's goods engines, great, strong things, with 3 wheels each side, joined with rods to strengthen 'em, as it might be me. Then there's mainline engines, as it might be this here young gentleman when he grows up and wins all the races at his school. So he will. The mainline engine, she's built for speed as well as power. That's 1 to the 915 up. The Green Dragon, said Phyllis. We call her the Snail, miss, among ourselves, said the porter. She's oftener behind days she liked the thought of it, and presently she made up her mind. She went out through the side door of the garden and climbed up the steep field to where the road runs along by the canal. She walked along until she came to the bridge that crosses the canal and leads to the village, and here she waited. It was very pleasant in the sunshine to lean one's elbow on the warm stone of the bridge and look down at the blue water of the canal. Bobby had never seen any other canal except the Regent's Canal, and the water of that is not at all a pretty colour. And she had never seen any river at all except the Thames, which also would be all the better if its face was washed. Perhaps the children would have loved the canal as much as the railway, but for two things. One was that they had found the railway first. On that first wonderful morning, when the house and the country and the moors and the rocks and great hills were all new to them. They had not found the canal till some days later. The other reason was that everyone on the railway had been kind to them. The station master, the porter, and the old gentleman who waved. And the people on the canal were anything but kind. The people on the canal were, of course, the bargees, who steered the low barges up and down, or walked beside the old horses that trampled up the mud of the towing path and strained at the long tow ropes. Peter had once asked one of the bargees the time and had been told to get out of that in a tone so fierce that he did not stop to say anything about his having just as much right on the towing path as the man himself. Indeed, he did not even think of saying it till some time later. Then, another day, when the children thought they would like to fish in the canal, a boy in a barge threw lumps of coal at them, and one of these hit Phyllis on the back of the neck. She was just stooping it down to tie up her bootlace, and, though the coal hardly hurt at all, it made her not care very much about going on fishing. On the bridge, however, Roberta felt quite safe, because she could look down on the canal, and if any boy showed signs of meaning to throw coal, she could duck behind the parapet. Presently there was a sound of wheels, which was just what she expected. The wheels were the wheels of the doctor's dog cart, and in the cart, of course, was the doctor. He pulled up and called out, "Hello, head nurse. Want a lift?" "I wanted to see you," said Bobby. "Your mother's not worse, I hope," said the doctor. "No, but..." "Well, step in then, and we'll go for a drive." Roberta climbed in, and the brown horse was made to turn round, which it did not like at all, for it was looking forward to its tea. I mean, its oats. "This is jolly," said Bobby, as the dog cart flew along the road by the canal. "We could throw a stone down any one of your 3 chimneys," said the doctor, as they passed the house. "Yes," said Bobby, "but you'd have to be a jolly good shot." "How do you know I'm not?" said the doctor. "Now then, what's the trouble?" Bobby fidgeted with the hook of the driving apron. "Come, out with it," said the doctor. "It's rather hard, you see," said Bobby, "to out with it, because of what Mother said." "What did Mother say?" "She said I wasn't to go telling everyone that we're poor. But you aren't everyone, are you?" "Not at all," said the 2 pence a week because she belonged to a club. Yes. You see, she told me what a good doctor you were, and I asked her how she could afford you, because she's much poorer than we are. I've been in her house, and I know. And then she told me about the club, and I thought I'd ask you, and, oh, I don't want Mother to be worried. Can't we be in the club too, the same as Mrs. Finney? The doctor was silent. He was rather poor himself, and he had been pleased at getting a new family to attend, so I think his feelings at that minute were rather mixed. You aren't cross with me, are you? Said Bobby in a very small voice. The doctor roused himself. Cross? How could I be? You're a very sensible little woman. Now, look here. Don't you worry. I'll make it all right with your mother, even if I have to make a special, brand new club all for her. Look here. This is where the aqueduct begins. What's its name? Asked Bobby. A water bridge, said the doctor. Look. The road rose to a bridge over the canal. To the left was a steep, rocky cliff with trees and shrubs growing in the cracks of the rock, and the canal here left off running along the top of the hill and started to run on a bridge of its own. A great bridge with tall arches that went right across the valley. Bobby drew a long breath. It is grand, isn't it? She said. It's like pictures in the history of Rome. Right, said the doctor. That's just exactly what it is like. The Romans were dead nuts on aqueducts. It's a splendid piece of engineering. I thought engineering was making engines. There are different sorts of engineering. Making roads and bridges and tunnels is one kind, and making fortifications is another. Well, we must be turning back. And remember, you aren't to worry about doctor's bills, or you'll be ill yourself, and then I'll send you a bill as long as the aqueduct. When Bobby had parted from the doctor at the top of the field that ran down from the road to 3 chimneys, she could not feel that she had done wrong. She knew that Mother would perhaps think differently. But Bobby felt that, for once, she was the one who was right, and she scrambled down the rocky slope with a really happy feeling. Phyllis and Peter met her at the back door. They were unnaturally clean and neat, and Phyllis had a red bow in her hair. There was only just time for Bobby to make herself tidy and tie up her hair with a blue bow before a little bell rang. There, said Phyllis. That's to show the surprise is ready. Now, you wait till the bell rings again, and then you may come into the dining room. So, Bobby waited. Tinkle, tinkle, said the little bell, and Bobby went into the dining room, feeling rather shy. Directly she opened the door, she found herself, as it seemed, in a new world of light and flowers and singing. Mother and Peter and Phyllis were standing in a row at the end of the table. The shutters were shut, and there were 12 candles on the table, one for each of Roberta's years. The table was covered with a thick sort of pattern of flowers, and at Roberta's place was a thick wreath of forget-me-nots and several most interesting little packages. And Mother It's a map of the railway, cried Peter. Look, those lilac lines are the metals, and there's the station, done in brown wallflowers. Lilliburnham is the train, and there are the signal boxes, and the road up to here, and those fat red daisies are us three waving to the old gentleman. That's him, the pansy in the laburnum train. And there's 3 chimneys done in the purple primroses, said Phyllis. And that little tiny rosebud is Mother, looking for us when we're late for tea. Peter invented it all, and we got all the flowers from the station. We thought you'd like it better. That's my present, said Peter, suddenly dumping down his adored steam engine on the table in front of her. Its tender had been lined with fresh white paper and was full of sweets. Oh, Peter, cried Bobby, quite overcome by this munificence. Not your own dear little engine that you're so fond of. Oh, no, said Peter, very promptly. Not the engine, only the sweets. Bobby couldn't help her face changing a little. Not so much because she was disappointed at not getting the engine, as because she had thought it so very noble of Peter, and now she felt she had been silly to think it. Also, she felt she must have seemed greedy to expect the engine as well as the sweets. So her face changed. Peter saw it. He hesitated a minute, then his face changed too, and he said, I mean not all the engine. I'll let you go halves if you like. You're a brick, cried Bobby. It's a splendid present. She said no more aloud, but to herself she said, that was awfully decent of Peter, because I know he didn't mean to. Well, the broken half shall be my half of the engine, and I'll get it mended and give it back to Peter for his birthday. Yes, Mother dear, I should like to cut the cake, she added, and tea began. It was a delightful birthday. After tea, Mother played games with them, any game they liked, and of course their first choice was Blind Man's Buff, in the course of which Bobby's forget-me-not wreath twisted itself crookedly over one of her ears and stayed there. Then, when it was near bedtime and time to calm down, Mother had a lovely new story to read them. You won't sit up late working, will you, Mother? Bobby asked as they said good night. And Mother said no, she wouldn't. She would only just write to Father and then get to bed. But when Bobby crept down later to bring up her presents, for she felt she really could not be separated from them all night, Mother was not writing, but leaning her head on her arms and her arms on the table. I think it was rather good of Bobby to slip quietly away, saying over and over, she doesn't want me to know she's unhappy, and I won't know. I won't know. But it made a sad end to the birthday. The very next morning, Bobby began to watch her opportunity to get Peter's engine mended secretly, and the opportunity came the very next afternoon. Mother went by train to the nearest town to do shopping. When she went there, she always went to the post office, perhaps to post letters to Father, for she never gave them to the children or Mrs. Finney to post, and she never went to the village herself. Peter and Phyllis went with her. Bobby wanted an excuse not to go, but try as she would, she couldn't think of a good one. And just when she felt all this really was an accident. So the others pitied her and went without her, for there was no time for her to change, because they were rather late already and had to hurry to the station to catch the train. When they had gone, Bobby put on her everyday frock and went down to the railway. She did not go into the station, but she went along the line to the end of the platform where the engine is when the down train is alongside the platform, the place where there are a water tank and a long, limp leather hose like an elephant's trunk. She hid behind a bush on the other side of the railway. She had the toy engine done up in brown paper, and she waited patiently with it under her arm. Then, when the next train came in and stopped, Bobby went across the metals of the up line and stood beside the engine. She had never been so close to an engine before. It looked much larger and harder than she had expected, and it made her feel very small indeed, and somehow very soft, as if she could very, very easily be hurt rather badly. The engine driver and fireman did not see her. They were leaning out of the other side, telling the porter a tale about a dog and a leg of mutton. "If you please," said Roberta, but the engine was blowing off steam and no one heard her. "If you please, Mr. Engineer," she spoke a little louder, but the engine happened to speak at the same moment, and of course Roberta's soft little voice hadn't a chance. It seemed to her that the only way would be to climb onto the engine and pull at their coats. The step was high, but she got her knee on it and clambered into the cab. She stumbled and fell on hands and knees on the base of the great heap of coals that led up to the square opening in the tender. The engine was not above the weaknesses of its fellows. It was making a great deal more noise than there was the slightest need for, and just as Roberta fell on the coals, the engine driver, who had turned without seeing her, started the engine, and when Bobby had picked herself up, the train was moving. Not fast, but much too fast for her to get off. All sorts of dreadful thoughts came to her, all together in one horrible flash. There were such things as express trains, which went on, she supposed, for hundreds of miles without stopping. Suppose this should be one of them. How would she get home? She had no money to pay for the return journey. And I've no business here. I'm an engine burglar. That's what I am, she thought. I shouldn't wonder if they could lock me up for this. And the train was going faster and faster. There was something in her throat that made it impossible for her to speak. She did stop as soon as she could. One thing that helped her was the thought that Peter would give almost his ears to be in her place, on a real engine, really going. The children had often wondered whether any engine driver could be found noble enough to take them for a ride on an engine. And now, here she was. She dried her eyes and sniffed earnestly. "Now then," said the fireman, "out with it. What do you mean by it, eh?" "Oh, please," sniffed Bobby, and stopped. "Try again," said the engine driver encouragingly. Bobby tried again. "Please, Mr. Engineer," she said. "I did call out to you from the line, but you didn't hear me, and I just climbed up to touch you on the arm. Quite gently, I meant to do it. And then I fell into the coals, and I am so sorry if I frightened you. Oh, don't be cross. Oh, please don't," she sniffed again. "We ain't so much cross," said the fireman, as interested like. "It ain't every day a little gal tumbles into our coal bunker out of the sky. Is it, Bill? What did you do it for, eh?" "That's the point," agreed the engine driver. "What did you do it for?" Bobby found that she had not quite stopped crying. The engine driver patted her on the back and said, "Here, cheer up, mate. It ain't so bad as all that. Here, I'll be bound." "I wanted," said Bobby, much cheered to find herself addressed as mate. "I only wanted to ask you if you'd be so kind as to mend this." She picked up the brown paper parcel from among the coals and undid the string with hot, red fingers that trembled. Her feet and legs felt the scorch of the engine fire, but her shoulders felt the wild, chill rush of the air. The engine lurched and shook and rattled, and as they shot under a bridge, the engine seemed to shout in her ears. The fireman shovelled on coals. Bobby unrolled the brown paper and disclosed the toy engine. "I thought," she said wistfully, "that perhaps you'd mend this for me, because you're an engineer, you know." The engine driver said he was blowed if he wasn't blessed. "I'm blessed if I ain't blowed," remarked the fireman. But the engine driver took the little engine and looked at it, and the fireman ceased for an instant to shovel coal, and looked too. "It's like your precious cheek," said the engine driver. "Whatever made you think we'd be bothered tinkering penny toys?" "I didn't mean it for precious cheek," said Bobby. "Only everybody that has anything to do with railways is so kind and good. I didn't think you'd mind. You don't really, do you?" she added, for she hadn't seen a not unkindly wink pass between the two. "My trade's driving of an engine, not mending her, especially such a outsize in engines as this here," said Bill. "And how are we gonna get you back to your sorrowing friends and relations, and I'll be forgiven and forgotten if you put me down next time you stop?" said Bobby, firmly, though her heart beat fiercely against her arm as she clasped her hands. "And lend me the money for a third-class ticket. I'll pay you back, honour bright. I'm not a confidence trick like in the newspapers. Really, I'm not." "You're a little lady, every inch," said Bill, relenting suddenly and completely. "We'll see you get home safe. And newspapers. He showed her 2 little dials, like clock faces, and told her how one showed how much steam was going, and the other showed if the brake was working properly. By the time she had seen him shut off steam with a big, shining steel handle, Bobby knew more about the inside working of an engine than she had ever thought there was to know. And Jim had promised that this second cousin's wife's brother should solder the toy engine, or Jim would know the reason why. Besides all the knowledge she had gained, Bobby felt that she and Bill and Jim were now friends for life, and that they had wholly and forever forgiven her for stumbling uninvited among the sacred coals of their tender. At Stacklepool Junction, she parted from them with warm expressions of mutual regard. They handed her over to the guard of a returning train, a friend of theirs, and she had the joy of knowing what guards do in their secret fastnesses, and understood how, when you pull the communication cord in railway carriages, a wheel goes round from under the guard's nose, and a loud bell rings in his ears. She asked the guard why his van smelt so fishy, and learned that he had to carry a lot of fish every day, and that the wetness in the hollows of the corrugated floor had all drained out of boxes full of plaice and cod and mackerel and soles and smelts. Bobby got home in time for tea, and she felt as though her mind would burst with all that had been put into it since she parted from the others. How she blessed the nail that had torn her frock. "Where have you been?" asked the others. "To the station, of course," said Roberta. But she would not tell a word of her adventures till the day appointed, when she mysteriously led them to the station at the hour of 3:19's transit, and proudly introduced them to her friends, Bill and Jim. Jim's second cousin's wife's brother had not been unworthy of the sacred trust imposed on him. The toy engine was, literally, as good as new. "Goodbye, oh, goodbye," said Bobby, just before the engine screamed its goodbye. "I shall always, always love you, and Jim's second cousin's wife's brother as well." And as the 3 children went home up the hill, Peter hugging the engine, now quite its old self again, Bobby told with joyous leaps of the hard